Okay. Is everybody good? Can you all see my screen with the Match Magic slide there? Okay, I see a couple head nods. Awesome. Great. All right, thank you. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Match Magic from Cobb Community Foundation. We are already in planning for this fall's Match Magic campaign, so thanks for joining us. We have a lot to get through in an hour. So welcome. We'll go ahead and get started. So if you haven't already, put your name and your organization in the chat so we have an idea of who's here. We love seeing new faces, new names, so welcome. All right, so here is our team. If we haven't met you yet, this is us. So we have from left to right our former intern, Rebecca, who's no longer with us, but Nikki. And then we have Gitanjali, who's on the call. And then we have Sherry, who you all probably already know, Richard, who's on this call, and then myself, and then our newest team member is Keisha on the right. So what are we going over today? So we are going to be going over just a little bit about Cobb Community Foundation, if you're not already familiar with us, what kinds of things we do in the community, and then we're going to dive right into Match Magic. And we'll hear from a guest presenter, a grant recipient from last year, who's going to give us their perspective on being a grantee last year. And then we'll get into the details. So some eligibility and some timeline details. And then we'll take a look at the application. I'll give you a little preview and then talk about how the match funds work. And then we'll dive into Q&A. All right, so here's our mission. So Cobb Community Foundation, if you're not familiar with us, we are, our mission is to be a catalyst for a thriving community, to mobilize people, ideas, and resources to improve quality of life in and around Cobb. So that means that we do things around these three big buckets here: community problem solving, collective giving, and nonprofit capacity. These are our three focus areas. Match Magic falls under our collective giving, which is how we, use our platform and our position in Cobb County to really highlight the nonprofit community and figure out how to really bank on our generosity, right? Marietta was voted #1 most generous city, I think, by GoFundMe a couple years ago, or might be as early as this year. So here is what we call our grant making. So this is both our internal grant making and also our fund holder grant making. We've focus these around three big areas. So nonprofit capacity building. You'll see a couple pictures of our CMP program on the left, and some of our internal grant making. We focus on childcare and early learning, nonprofit capacity, and also economic mobility. And then on the right is the highlight of our collective giving, which is Match Magic. Another project we have going on that you might have heard about is Cobb Vital Signs. I'll just spend a minute talking about this. This is a countywide data collection and action tool that basically asks the question, how is our community really doing? We go straight to the people who are experiencing need to ask them questions and interview them about what they think are their what are their biggest barriers and what they think they folks need to do to improve. So we are taking this data. The data collection is finished. We're taking this data, presenting it in a report on October 15th. This is going to be a fairly large event, so you can mark your calendar now if you'd like. More details are coming out, but October 15th is our official big launch day for the report. And then post-report, we will be doing some community action. So bringing people together, having conversations, deciding what should we be doing next based on the data that's coming out of this report. So this is another thing we're very excited about. Okay, so on to Match Magic. So a lot of you I recognize from last year that you all have participated or in some way were familiar with the campaign. So overall, what is it? What is Match Magic? So Match Magic is a give-a-thon. So we have chosen a 3-week period that is focused around capacity building and also fundraising for the campaign. And what this really means is, even though it's called Match Magic, it's more than just a match, right? So this is a way for your organization to supercharge your end of year fundraising, to raise your visibility, to get new donors, to work with our marketing and communications strategy partner, Bowercom, to access a multi-channel media campaign and be granted proportional match pool dollars. So there's a lot of different pieces that are going on in Match Magic. and it's more than just a match. So why do we choose this time of year? We're capitalizing on Georgia Gives Day and on Giving Tuesday. So the 3-week campaign is always the 3 weeks prior, culminating on Giving Tuesday. If you were around last year, we were a little afraid to say what our goal was because it was $1 million. And we safely went past that based on all the grantees' participation last year. So this year we've raised our goal. Our match pool goal is now $250,000 this year. Very happy to announce we've already secured $155,000 toward this goal. So we're already ahead of last year, the total match pool last year. So we still have a little bit to go. And then our overall campaign fundraising goal is 1.75 million. So that seems like a big number, but last year the overall raised was 1.7. So we feel like this is absolutely doable. So a couple of big changes from this year to last year. One of the biggest changes was the change in the match pool calculation. So most everything stayed the same, but we'll get more into detail about the match pool calculation change. But a couple of points overall is that the campaign will remain at 3 weeks. So this year it will run from November 10th to December 1st. And you do have to raise $10,000 to be eligible for the match pool. And that is the same as last year as well. Okay, so Match Magic, how does it work? So, like I mentioned, it's more than just a match. It really is to help nonprofits grow your donor base, to strengthen your fundraising skills, to increase your community visibility, and build those lasting relationships with new supporters. So, the matching funds are an incentive, but we really measure success in many different ways. So, what do we do during those 3 weeks? So, we create a Match Magic giving portal, which is both online and physical. So, the online catalog is a website where every nonprofit will have your own unique giving page, and you can customize that through your application. And every participating organization will get one of those. And then we also publish a physical gift guide. This is a very nice printed, very professional looking booklet that is handed out at events. We mail them to certain fund holders. We also put it in the with a great partnership with Marietta Daily Journal. We put it inside one of their papers the Saturday before the campaign starts so that it gets out to lots of folks in the community. We also promote the campaign on all of our social media platforms. We put it on, put it in our newsletters. We put it on our email newsletter campaign. We also promote paid social media and secure coverage through the MDJ and other media outlets. So we are out there talking about Match Magic, putting it out there in the community. So any organization that is included in the campaign will be included in all of those social media and media outlets. So this is a really big deal. We love talking about it, and we hope lots of people follow along as well. So on the right here, this is not a traditional grant. I know we call it a grant program, but it's not a traditional grant in the sense, we grant out money and then you send in a report. I know that's how a lot of grants work. And it's not a we do it for you fundraiser. We as the foundation are not the ones out there in the community. Really, this is a joint effort of a platform that we're providing and then a fundraising campaign that each grantee will be running alongside. So really think of it more as like an opportunity to highlight your mission. So what are we asking of our grantees during the campaign? So during those 3 weeks when we're sending things out and mailing things and printing books, we are asking the nonprofit grantees to create a plan. So create a plan for your fundraising effort using the tools given to you. So you will have access to Bowercomp, which is our marketing and communications partner. They will provide help with writing your application, which is the content that will be printed online and in that catalog. They will help with creating a social media toolkit. So they will have email templates, calendars, all the things needed for you to run a successful campaign. We also ask you to be proactive. So think about who you want to contact and when. Ask current donors. Maybe you have a list of prospective donors that you've been waiting to reach out to. That would be a good match for this campaign. Think about whether you want to use email. Do you want to try a text campaign? Are your donors receptive to snail mail? Are they more receptive to social media? How are you going to get the word out about Match Magic to your donors? And then also you can be creative. We heard lots of stories from past grantees about maybe using QR codes for the first time, or I think there's a Canva template that gets shared that, oh my gosh, some of the organizations were like, this is great. I have someone to ask all my Canva questions. How do I make this or how do I create that? Or maybe try using short videos. These are just some of the creative ways we've seen other grantees participate with Match Magic. Okay, so why do all this work? Why apply? If you've seen the application, it's fairly doable, but can be a little long. It gets a little tricky when you have to write the copy for what's going to go in the catalog. But really think about this opportunity as more than just a match. So why do we do this? We want to highlight your nonprofit to the community. We want to increase your visibility. We want you to be able to engage your community. It's a opportunity for you to introduce your mission to new donors, maybe reach a new audience, and build those relationships. If you have a new social media tool that you want to try out, or you built out your website and you want to show it off, this would be a good way to do it. Maybe test a new campaign strategy and really be able to tell your story. So we've thought that strategy plus engagement will make you really successful in Match Magic, meaning that you're coming in with some sort of idea on what you would like Match Magic to do for you or how you will use Match Magic, and then really understanding how to engage your donors and prospective donors will really make for a really successful campaign. Okay. So is Ed on the call? Ed is our grantee from last year. Ed, if you're on the call, go ahead and unmute as I introduce you. Um, Ed Miller is the Director of Development at Good Samaritan Health Center of Cobb. Good Samaritan raised, you can see here, 129,000 last year. And we've asked Ed to come up with a couple of answers to these questions on the screen. What made them decide to apply, and any tips they have for potential applicants. Ed, are you on?
Yes, I'm right here. How are you?
Awesome. Good. How are you? Thanks so much
I'm
for
doing
joining
well.
us.
Absolutely. Well, guys, good afternoon. As Lisa Ruth said, I participated last year. But to be transparent and honest with you guys, 2025 was my redemption year. Let me tell you how that is. Because in 2024, I was also a participant. However, I was brand new to this role, and literally the day that the application was due was when I was filling it out and heard about it. So I really didn't know what I did not know, and I just put a goal of $10,000, and I think that year we raised a little bit over $25,000. Having seen the results from other participants, I knew that there was a better way and that we could do better. So in 2025, I started planning very early. One of the things that I will say to you is that historical data is your friend. I went through and I was able to target my donors based on previous history, and I was early out with the communication. I took our letterhead and I put the Match Magic logo under our letterhead and created a letter and sent it to those prospective donors that I know had been traditional, high potential donors. And I got it out October 25th. The very day Lisa Ruth said that we could, I started very early because really it gave me a window of about 5 weeks to engage these donors from October 25th to December the 2nd. And so I sent that letter out. I also attached the personal letter with the gift guide, and I put it on our website that we were a participant and what it was for. We also did a postcard to those same donors in the middle of the campaign, like 3 weeks in before it closed. And then we did post-campaign calls and thank you letters. So, for those of you participating this year, what I would say to you is target your donors, know who your potentials are, and get out early. I would say keep it simple, but be specific. I wrote that letter, and Lisa Ruth, it'll take me about a minute and 30 seconds to read it to them, and I'll read it very quickly, okay? My letter said, dear person, thanks for being a consistent, faithful contributor to the mission and vision of Good Samaritan Health Center of Cobb. Good Sam exists to share the love of Christ by providing quality health care for those in need. This is possible only because of the generosity of yourself and others. During these inflationary times, everyone is looking for ways to stretch their dollars. You can do the same on behalf of Good Sam. Good Sam has been chosen as one of the 27 nonprofits to participate in Cobb Community Foundation's Match Magic Giveathon 2025. It's very simple. Instead of giving directly to Good Sam, give on our behalf by giving your usual contributions between November 11th and December 2nd directly to Cobb Community Foundation. To be rewarded with a prorated multiplier of the matching gift pool, Good Sam must raise $10,000. This year's goal is $75,000 to cover the cost to hire another part-time family nurse practitioner. Enclosed is a flyer with details of how to give. Please don't hesitate to contact me if you have questions. Thanks in advance for your support. I've also given that letter to Lisa Ruth. If any of you all want it just as a template, I'm very happy to share with you because it really helped us to stay focused on the group that we were looking to target. One other thing I will say to you in closing is that uh, be accessible to your potential and prospective donors. And what I mean by that is if you have a direct number, give them that number instead of an extension. And also be willing to do some hand holding. I'll give you a quick example. I had this older gentleman who's given to Good Sam for years and years. And when he got the letter, he called me and he had concerns about sending the money directly to Cobb Community Foundation. So I said, listen, make it out, Mr. B. Make sure it's to Cobb Community Foundation between November 11th and December 2nd. I will hand deliver it if you will send the check to me at Good Sam. He sent the check to me, and this is a true story, which Lisa Ruth can verify. That check was for $25,000, and I hand delivered it to Cobb Community Foundation. So I'll say to you, Target, keep it simple, but be specific with what you're asking for. Be accessible, and then follow up with your prospective donors.
That's great. Thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. Is there anyone on the call who would like to ask Ed a quick question before we move on? I know this is a lot of information. We'll wait just a minute. You're getting lots of hearts, Ed. You did a great job. All right. Okay. I don't hear anyone with questions. Ed, you're going to hang out with us till the end, right? Just in case anyone thinks of a
Yes,
question. Okay.
absolutely.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay. So you can see that the grantees will know before being included in the campaign. You'll have several weeks to kind of plan this out. But I love what Ed said there, be have a plan, keep it simple, and then follow up with your donors. I think that's great advice. All right. So here we're going to dive into, okay, we're getting a little bit into the nitty-gritty. So here are our eligibility requirements. So what organizations are eligible to participate in Match Magic? These have not changed from last year. So if you were familiar from last year, it is basically you must be providing services in Cobb County or to Cobb County residents. You do not have to be headquartered in Cobb County. But you must be serving Cobb County residents or providing services in Cobb County. You have to be a 501c3 unless you have a fiscal sponsor. And if you have a fiscal sponsor and you have more questions, you can always call me later. We can talk about that. You must be registered with the Georgia Secretary of State as a nonprofit. You have to show that registration, which is not your professional license. You do have to have your 501c3 for at least 1 year before today. The application is actually open as of this morning. So if you want to go to the application right after this call to take a look at these eligibility requirements, please do. If you have a fiscal sponsor, the operations of your fiscal sponsor have to have begun at least 1 year ago. We'll only be accepting one application per EIN number. So if you are an organization who has multiple affiliates, but you share an EIN, you're going to want to talk to your teammates sharing that one EIN number and decide on which project and who will be submitting that application on your behalf. Faith-based organizations, if we have any faith-based orgs on the call, you are eligible for non-proselytizing activities. So you won't have a 501c3 technically as a nonprofit, but you are still eligible to apply. And there's a separate section in the application for you. If you're from the school system, individual public schools are not eligible, but district-wide programs that support an entire system are eligible. Private schools are eligible as long as you have your own EIN number, and government entities may apply if the funds will be used for charitable purposes. If there's any questions about any of this, please let me know. Always available by phone or by email, and I will share that at the end. Okay, so the timeline. So when are things happening? So today is our Grantseeker session. And like I mentioned, the application is open today in the portal. The application will be open for 5 weeks. Gives you a little bit of time to talk to your team. How do you want to handle it? Maybe create a strategy. We have 4 opportunities for potential applicants to talk to BauerCom, our marketing and comms partner, on how to best fill out the application. And these are really important. And these are very important because what you put in the application is what will be shown on the online catalog and in the physical catalog. So once we have your application, that information is going to go straight to the catalog. So you really want to make your mission and your story and your fundraising ask very, very clear. And attending these sessions will help you to do that. So the first one, which is this Thursday from 10 to 11 a.m., all the Zoom links here are open. You don't have to register. You just log on and it is a workshop. So the first one is always a workshop. The next 3 are all Q&As. So it's more of a classroom style lesson this Thursday, but then the one on July 8th, July 14th, and July 23rd are all Q&As, meaning you will bring a question to the session. There will not be, a lesson or there won't be anything to go through other than your questions. So please bring a question. Best case is that you would have already gone through the application, had a draft of what you want to talk about, or maybe jot down a couple questions, and then bring those to the sessions. It will help Lori, our facilitator, help you to write your best application. The application will close on Wednesday, July 29th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time sharp. The portal will close at that point. Please, please, please don't start your application at 4:45 that day. The portal gets overwhelmed sometimes, and it's going to take a little longer with all the people in there, trying to do their last minute edits and submit. If you can, please submit early. That will help you avoid that. You will know if your organization will be included by the end of August. So before you break for Labor Day, you will know. So you will have time between Labor Day and then November 10th to kind of refine your strategy, and we'll be in constant contact after that if you're chosen. If you are chosen, there will be a mandatory virtual meeting for any grantees on September 10th. This is for anyone working on the campaign. So if there's more than one person working on the campaign internally, you'll want to invite them to this meeting. That's just so everyone understands the message, everyone understands how the match works, everyone knows how to talk about being included in the campaign and what will be included with that. The campaign will run from November 10th to December 1. The portal, the online giving portal where people can give via credit card, will close at 11:59 p.m. However, any other form of donation, a check, a wire transfer, a DAF grant, a stock, which we can all accept, they have to be completed by 5 p.m. on December 1. No one will be here after 5 o'clock, so we won't be able to do that for you. But we would love to do that for you before 5 p.m. on that day. And hand-delivered checks are great. Last year, the mail was very unreliable. So I would highly suggest that if you're expecting checks, especially big checks, to hand deliver them or, offer to your donors to hand deliver. And then the final match allocation will be announced on Friday the 4th. That is our anticipated date. Um, and then the funds will be granted back to the grantees in mid-December. And there is one very short report that we ask of the grantees to be completed by Friday, January 8th, while everything is still fresh in your mind. Okay, moving on. Okay, so the match calculation. So this is a change from last year. So last year we did a cap on how much of the match pool grantees could receive. This year we're changing it up. So why are we doing that? We originally put that cap in place to protect smaller nonprofits from being overshadowed or maybe out fundraised by larger organizations. However, in practice, that hasn't happened. Our At the top of the fundraising last year, in addition to Good Sam, we're a 100% volunteer-run organization, was the top fundraiser, and then I think the second highest had one staff member. So these were very, very small teams with not a lot of staff that came up with some really huge results. So we do not want to disincentivize very highly motivated fundraisers, volunteer run teams, small teams. So we've decided to make a change to the calculation to make it a bit more fair. So the change this year is you still must raise $10,000 during the donation period to qualify for matching funds. That is the same. This year, the matching funds are going to be distributed based on your organization's share of the fundraising total. So if you raised 15% of the overall fundraising total, you would receive 15% of the match pool. Now, once we get up to 50%, 50 of the fundraising total, that's when a cap will fall into place. So it's a straight percent match all the way up until 50%. If one organization raises more than 50% of the fundraising total, then we're going to take any overage of the 50% out of the calculation altogether. So that organization will be treated as if they had only raised 50%. So that is the highest they'll be able to go. I'm going to show you the math on the next page. I know this is going to be a little confusing. Okay, so here's the example. So in this scenario, the total raised is $1 million and the match pool is 200,000. So organization A raised $8,000, so they are not eligible for matching funds. So their portion of the match pool will remain in the match pool. It's not going anywhere. They're not getting any portion of the match pool. Organization C raised 550,000, which is more than 50%. So their amount counted toward the match is 50,000. It's going to be capped at 50%. So that $50,000 is then removed from the calculation. So you can see at the bottom of the third column at 942,000, the $50,000 has been removed from the calculation altogether. So then if you move to the fourth column, you'll see that's the percent of the match pool that that organization will receive, and then the amount of the match award at the end. So I'm just going to let that marinate for just a second because I know there's probably some questions about that. So hang on to your question or type it in the chat. G is keeping an eye on the chat, and we'll get to your question at the end. So I'm going to keep going. I think there was something else. So again, the matching formula is very straightforward unless you don't raise the $10,000 or someone raises more than 50% of the total fundraising. Okay. I'm going to move on.
Okay, there is one question in the chat about organization A. If you want to take it right now, Lisa, I know just because the math.
Yeah.
It's Liz Platno. She said, "Does the organization A get to keep their 8,000?"
Absolutely. You keep everything that you fundraise, minus credit card fees. That's the only fee. So we don't take a fee, but there are credit card fees that are going to get taken out if the donor decides not to cover the fees. Donors always have the option to cover the fee. If they do not, then credit card fees will come out. but that's the only fee that's taken out. All right, cool. All right, so hopefully that math makes a little more sense because that last year was very hard to explain. Okay, so on to the application. What does the application look like? So like I mentioned, the application's open now. One note before you access the application, if you think your organization already has an account within the portal and you don't have access to it, please email me. And that I can find out for you and add you to that account. Because what will happen if you create another account for your organization is that there will now be two accounts and you won't be able to see any previous awards or drafts or applications that your organization has already submitted to us before. So you're going to want to know what you put in the application last year. So if you're new to your organization or anything like that, just email me and we'll figure it out. We'll get you added. So here's the link to the application portal. You're going to want to click apply at the top, and then it will look like the bottom photo, the Cobb Community Foundation Match Magic. And instead of preview, it will say, I think it says apply or open. Okay, and once you click in there, there's going to be 3 parts to your application. So the first part's pretty easy. You've probably seen this on a million applications before. It's your organization information. I'm going to ask you about generally your contact, your mission, your services. Now, because this is we're a Cobb Community Foundation and we are focused on Cobb residents, or Cobb community, we want to know how many Cobb residents you serve and what percent of those you serve live in Cobb County. Okay, this is not what percent of Cobb County residents do you serve? That's a different question. There's 800,000-ish Cobb County residents. We don't want to know what percent of them you serve. We want to know of the people you serve, what percent live in Cobb County. Okay. And then we will ask for a budget. So this can be 2 types of budgets. If you're small, you might only have 1. If you're large, you might have 2. So we want the organizational budget. We want your overall organization budget. And then if you are asking for funds for a particular program, so say you do 5 things, you do housing assistance, utility assistance, you do a food pantry, and some other things, but you're only asking for funds for the food pantry, we want to see your overall organizational budget that includes all those programs, but then we also want to see just a budget for the food pantry. All right, so that's the difference. So organizational versus program, and you only need the program budget if that's the program that you're asking for funds for. And then we need to know your charitable designation. Part 2 is the registration, your IRS determination letter, and then your financials. Okay, for your financials, I'm just realizing you guys may not be able to see the bottom of this, but hopefully you can. But in the middle here in the orange, so your financials. So upload a 990 or your 990 EZ, 990N, and an income statement and balance sheet. Okay, so what this means is if you are an organization with a certain budget, you are required to file a 990. If you are in that category, you upload the 990, you're good to go. Okay. If you are a small organization, you may not reach that threshold set by the IRS to file a 990. So you may file a 990 EZ, 990N, or none at all, right? Because faith-based don't need to file 990s at all, nor do government agencies. So you may not have a 990 EZ or 990N. So in that case, we would love for you to upload an income statement and a balance sheet. So the definitions of those 2 things are here on the screen. We've also put examples and the definitions in the application as well. Okay, so you're more than welcome to download the example and look at it. You can use that as a template, or if your organization has one ready to go, that would probably be the best. But you could download the example to just look and see what we're asking for. Every organization's is going to look a little different, right? So if you have different categories or different things, to put on the income statement and balance sheet, please do that if it's not included on the example. If you have any questions, please email me, call me, and let's talk about it. But just so we're clear, it's either or, right? You don't need to upload a 990 and an income statement and balance sheet. It's either or. It's the 990, the full 990, or the income statement and balance sheet. Okay? And then there's a very important question at the end of the financials, which is there anything else you would like us to know? So we don't have, access to every situation that every nonprofit is going through. We we can be very kind to an organization when the financials, when we know more than maybe what's on the page, right? So if there's something going on, we're planning on buying a building, or we're adding a position, or we're whatever the context is for the financials that isn't shown on there, but you would like us to know, please put that in there. Even if it's something very simple and you think may not affect it, put it in there. We'd rather have the information than not, right? So it might change the way we view the financials. So go ahead and put that in there. Okay, part 3. This is the gift guide catalog materials. So when I said we were going to create an online catalog and a printed catalog for you, this is where that information comes from. So what you put in the gift guide catalog materials is what is going to be printed and sent out to the public. So you want this to be you want to review this. You want to make sure this displays your mission and your ask in a way that you would like. And this is the content that's going to be covered in those 4 coaching calls that I mentioned earlier. So if you read through the application, you're like, I don't know what to put here, I really don't understand this question, please come to one of those workshops and ask our marketing and comms partner what they think should go in there. There's also a link in this material to go back to last year's catalog, so you can kind of take a look, maybe get some inspiration about what people wrote last year. And like I mentioned before, if you plan to come to one of the workshops, please come prepared. Please read through the application first, jot down a few questions, jot down a few ideas, maybe have an idea of what program you want to cover for your fundraising. It'll make the answers that she's helping you with even better, right? Okay. So we will move on. Okay, application continued. So your field of interest, primary and secondary, this is important. And this is important because when we train our grant reviewers, the people who will decide who will be included in the campaign, we are going to ask them to please choose a variety of field of interests. So what that means is we would like to showcase the width and the breadth of nonprofits within the community. So we want to cover everything from, workforce to healthcare to animals to, youth development, whatever your field of interest is. We ask you to please put in a primary and a secondary so that we know where to categorize your organization and your program, right? That you're asking for money for. We need to know where to place you so that we can best showcase you, amongst all the other grantees. Okay, number 2 is your fundraising goal. This is probably our number 1 question. How much should I ask for? That is so subjective because you all are so different. But the short answer is be aspirational, but realistic. Okay, push yourself a little bit out of what you think you might be able to fundraise, but also make sure that it's something that it's achievable, right? Because what ends up happening is we can't change that number on our end. So once it's published and out there, it's in that physical printed guide, we can't change that. So if you end up reaching that number on the online catalog, how are you going to communicate that, right, to your donors? What's the message for them to keep giving? If you go way over that, maybe that's great news, right? Just think about what that number, how are you going to talk about that number, right? So that's why we push people to be a little aspirational, maybe push your donors a little bit, but also be realistic because you also want to be able to celebrate something, right? Celebrate a little something. And then the website, we're going to ask you to put in your website. This can be any part of your website. It does not have to be your homepage. If you have a page you want to build out just for Match Magic, great, put that in there. If you wanted to go to your donation page, fantastic. If you wanted to go to your program page, wonderful. So this can be any part of your website, does not have to be your homepage. All right, so the rest of the questions are focused on what are those pieces of information that we're going to put into the catalog. So the first one is your appeal and why does it matter? So this is actually going to be your longest, and notice this is only 750 characters. And this is the longest you have. So this is, your ask written out, covering all aspects. And we've put in the application some prompts to kind of help you think about it and some examples. And if you need inspiration, there's a link to last year's catalog there so you can read through a bunch of them. But basically, you want to describe what's the problem and how you're addressing it. Why is your program best suited to fix this problem? And you can throw some stats in there. It is good to have some numbers as far as what's the current situation, how are you addressing that. It tends to be a little more informative for donors in that way. So this is going to be your longest um, descriptor in the catalog. So you want this to really tell your story. And then from there, the descriptors get a little shorter. So then we go down to your ask. And what is your ask? Okay, so this is what you're asking people to do. So before you're telling them, here's the problem. Now you're asking them, here's what we'd like you to do. So please help us provide fresh and nutritious food. Please help us build our new building so that, moms have a chance to, be housed with their families. Make this very brief, and you want it to cover your specific fundraising goal. So this isn't your organizational budget. This is the program or the ask that you are fundraising for through Match Magic, and really make it specific. I would second Ed's suggestion. Explain how much you need, why you need it, and how it's going to benefit people. But it's got to be in maybe 1 or 2 sentences, 250 characters. So this is your short, elevator pitch. So, and then it's going to get even shorter. So the next is your headline. This is what's going to show, right in a headline to say there's 3 or 4 organizations on one page. This is going to be your headline. Why are people going to read your paragraph? So your headline is 75 characters or less. And how do you draw people in to read your longer descriptor? So in 1 sentence, describe your problem and how you're fixing it. And these are questions that BauerCom can help you with too. And then the last question is your promotion plan. This one will not be included in any printed guides or on the online catalog. This is for our reviewers to understand, how do you plan to promote Match Magic? So if you want to put some thought into that, how are you going to get new donors? Or what kind of campaign are you going to run? Is it going to be digital? Are you doing snail mail? Are you trying a new tool? Tell us everything, right? Put more in there, I think, than you think you need. I think it helps our reviewers to understand the motivation behind wanting to be included in Match Magic. All right, and then there's a couple more uploads that we ask you to do. We would like you to upload 3 very high quality photos and your logo. If you have any questions about what should be in the photos should ideally be square. We can always crop them differently otherwise, but the first image for sure has to be square. We need at least 1 square. And please make sure that the photos are of something that represents the fundraising you're asking for. So if you're asking for funds for a food pantry, this could be, people handing out food, or it could be a close-up of food, or it could be, things that are related to the food pantry. Try not to make the photos very far away. It's kind of hard to see, especially when there's several grantees maybe on a single page of paper. We want to make sure that the photos are very close up and are very clear, so that we can showcase your program to the best of its ability. And then we also need your logo. All right, frequently asked questions. I will just go through these really quickly. I'm looking at the time. I want to leave time for questions. Okay, how much should I request? Again, aspirational but achievable. Keep in mind we can't change it after we put it in the grant application. So something to think about. If you're selected, how much funding will I receive? You will receive everything that you fundraise. You receive 100% minus credit card fees of what you fundraise, plus your portion of the match pool if you qualify. If you're selected, how do I see how much money? You will have a unique giving page, which is updated in real time for credit card donations. Now, it takes us a few days internally to process stock checks, wires, ACHs, DAF grants, anything like that. We can accept all those. It'll just take us a couple days to update your giving page. So give us like 2 or 3 days, maybe for, if we're having if it's over a holiday weekend or something, to update those. Will I learn who the donors are? Absolutely. So we are going to send you a spreadsheet of the names and contact info of all donors unless they choose to remain anonymous. We will do that weekly during the campaign. By popular demand, we're going to do that again the day before the campaign ends. And then we'll send you one final spreadsheet after the donation window closes. Does CCF charge any fees? Nope. So the only fees will be charged will be credit card processing fees, and donors always have the option to cover those fees when they're checking out. And when will I receive my funds? All funds raised will be granted back to the grantees in mid-December. All right. Any tips? Yes. Start with a plan. Who do you know? Who do you want to reach out to? How and when do you want to communicate that? Focus on the number of donors as well as dollars. So something to think about is 20 $50 gifts. That's 20 people who are learning about your mission, right? It's the same dollar value as one $1,000 donation, but those 20 people could become recurring donors, volunteers, advocates. Our goal with Match Magic is to really get you out in the community to get you some new donors. So that's part of our mission. Craft a very clear, compelling story. Yeah, the story is gonna be what sells, right? So you want to make sure that your story is clear and that your impact is clear. You want to build a little momentum before the campaign. We'll let you know when it's okay to start sharing that you're a grantee, but be ready when that is good to go. So you want to prime your donors. Create multiple touch points. Use all of your available tools. Maybe even test a new tool. We had a grantee a few years ago test out a new texting campaign. As part of Match Magic. Celebrate your momentum. You'll want to thank your donors quickly and personally, which is why we try and get that donor info out to you pretty soon. And then think beyond the campaign. How are you going to steward your donors beyond Match Magic, right? We want to introduce you to new folks, but then how will you steward them post-campaign? Okay, last slide and then questions. So feedback from 2025 grantees. So we raised over $1.7 million, 93% reported gaining new donors, which is great. That was 739, I believe, new donors over the campaign. 89% received exposure to a new audience. Almost 80% got higher donation amounts from existing supporters. And almost everybody from last year said they'd like to participate again. And almost 90% said the time invested was worth the exposure. So, all right. That is the end of my portion. Who has questions?
We have a few great questions.
Awesome.
I'm gonna say Tamara first, and Tamara, please correct me if I pronounce your name incorrectly from Adult Disability Medical Healthcare. One was if selected, would participating in Match Magic replace participating in GA Gives or Georgia Gives?
We're not affiliated. So yes, they're two separate campaigns. So you could definitely do both if you were accepted into Match Magic, you could do your own Georgia Gives. Just know that Match Magic culminates on Giving Tuesday, so that's going to be our biggest push for donors.
And the second one Tamara had was, will the June 25th session be recorded if we have a conflict?
June 25th. Let me go back.
Go back.
Okay, that's the workshop. That's a great question. Do you remember, G? I'll have to double check with Lori.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll double check and get back to you. That was Tamara.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, and I do remember from last year that Lori did record the call.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We have a few others. Can I put one really quick, a few tips on photos that I've noticed in your applications? Smiling human faces always help. Individuals rather than group photos create more of an impact. Real images over stock images are always appreciated, and high resolution, high resolution, high resolution. And then there are a few other questions, and feel free to clarify, guys, if you need to. Mark Dowis, how do you account for pre-arranged match gifts?
Um, Not sure what you mean by prearranged match gifts. If
Hi, this is
you,
Mark.
Yeah.
We always have givers who want to help others give. So, for example, for the Georgia Gives for Giving Tuesday, I'll go out and find some high net worth individuals who, on a dollar for dollar basis to a specific amount, will match. And we use that in our promotion. And it works very well for us, obviously. It's like a 2-for-1. How do you account for that? I've gone out and got the money. It's not guaranteed. Obviously, it's tied back to the giving. So how would you account for that?
yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, the short answer is we're not affiliated with Georgia Gives, right? So, and our match works a little differently. So that's, um, but I will say we have had several instances where previous grantees have lined up donors prior, like once they found out they were in and knew that they had donors who were willing to give, um, communicated with those donors to make sure they gave during the 3 week window,
Right.
to us. In case it wasn't clear, the donations come to us and then we grant them back. Just, I'm
No, I
not sure if I
understand.
said that. Okay. But to make sure that the proportional match was met for Match Magic, and they've had very good success with that. But as far as combining it with Georgia Gives or
No, I was thinking of using the same tool. You talked about being creative. So
right.
if we opted to go this way, right? I'm not sure whether I would recommend to my board that we run two campaigns in the same
Yeah.
time frame that
Yeah.
essentially mimic each other. That's a strategic question for them more than for me. But the point I'm trying to make, Lisa Ruth, is we've prearranged these dollars, right? Now they will be given at that time, right? But what I don't, so for
Yeah.
example, you give us $100 and I go back to Mr. Smith and say, I got $100 in this time frame. And he says, I'm giving you $100, right? Now he may have capped out at $1,000. So I'm not sure I'm making the point. Maybe we can take this offline. I'm not sure this is something that's pertinent to everybody else, but typically we drive a lot of giving with a match.
Sure. Yeah. I think maybe we should follow up with a phone call and kind of
Cool.
just kind of talk it out. Yeah.
All right.
But thank
Got
you
you.
for
I
asking.
got your number. No
Yeah.
problem.
Perfect.
Yeah. There are a lot of questions, and if we aren't able to address all of them, Lisa, do you think you could reach
That's
out and
and
okay.
I have time too because I'll stop the recording, but I can stay on if people can stay on.
Okay, great. Also, I think the Northside Church, I don't know if that example is helpful, but Northside Church used to give a monthly donations, and they just clubbed all of their annual donations for one of our participants in Match Magic. And they were able to match their annual donation, so they bundled all of them. So I don't know if that helps Mark, but Lisa Ruth can address more. Um, there is the next one is from Okoi. Our nonprofit status is still pending, but we do have a fiscal sponsor. They work all over the country, but I think they are based in Alabama. Can we still apply?
Yes. So your fiscal sponsor has their state registration in Alabama. Is that what I'm? If that's the case, then yes, we would just need that state registration. Okay, I see a yes. I think I see yes.
Okay. Um, I'm just going in order to be fair. So Kevin Bounds, the online application says if you file a 990 EZ 990 N or do not file a 990, please upload an income statement and a balance sheet of your most recently completed year as one document. So if we file a 990 EZ instead of a standard 990, do we upload an income and balance sheet instead of the 990 EZ?
Yes. Short answer is yes.
Wonderful. And then Liz Platner has another question. CCF has access to our donors' info. Does CCF contact our donors for your own purposes?
So donors So you will receive all donor information to your organization, right? As far as the foundation contacting those people who've donated to Match Magic, we will contact them later. They'll receive some of our emails, but they will also have, sorry, my screen just went blank. Can you guys, I don't know if you guys can see, but anyway, they will be added to email newsletters, which they can then unsubscribe from. There will always be the option to unsubscribe. But as far as soliciting donation, no, but they will receive our email newsletters.
Yes. We can see you. And then Carlene says, please give an example of a governmental entity that could apply. And I'm not, Carlene,
Okay.
if you want.
Cobb County Senior Services would, it mostly for programs that are charitable in nature, that are, not necessarily charitable dollars, but specific programs. Senior Services is the one that comes to mind first.
I'm just going to go with the next, if that's okay. Sarah Ambrose says, if an organization keeps all funds they fundraise, where does the percentage of funds from Match Magic come from to give to each organization? So where does the match pool come from? Is it already funds Cobb Community Foundation has raised to give to participating selecting organizations?
Oh, thank you for your question. Yeah, so the match pool is raised through what we call our corporate champions. And basically, and other sponsors as well. So I shouldn't neglect them. So corporate champions and other sponsors who have given specifically for this purpose. So there are several sponsors. G, do you have that list handy? Or I don't have it handy. I should, but we have several who have already pledged, up to the $155,000, and we're still actively looking for other sponsors. So basically, they're businesses in and around Cobb County who want to help. That's the bottom line. Walton Communities,
Atlanta Braves,
the Braves,
SA
yes.
White Oil, GPC are some of them. Then
we'll have
yes,
that
sorry.
list on the website very soon.
And then Sarah Ambro from ALS United of Georgia. If an organization keeps all funds they fundraise. Oh, sorry, that was the one. Thank you. And then Amici Oko, thank you for the info. This was super helpful. Yay. Okay, there's a whole bunch of thank yous now.
Well, good. All right, so that's all the questions.
If I missed anybody's, please feel free to jump in.
Okay. Well, y'all, it's 2:59. I mean, way to go. That was great. Thank you all for joining us. This video recording will be on our website with hopefully within the next day or two. That's my goal. And please visit there to view it again. All of the links are going to be live links. So if you view the slides, everything in here is going to be live links. My email's on the screen. My phone's on the screen. Give us a call. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to stop recording. Hang on.